Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this September 16th, 2022 meeting of the CEP Strategic Advisory Committee to order. Luke, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Vice Mayor Chow.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Housing Commissioner Parrish.
Here.
And Planning Commissioner Scharf. Okay, looks like 3 members of the committee are present.
Okay, thank you, Luke. We begin with item 1, approval of the minutes. Subject is to approve the July 25th Community Engagement Plan Strategic Advisory Committee special meeting minutes, and the recommended action is to approve the meeting minutes. Give everyone a moment to review them. I'm going to go to members of the public to see if there are any hands raised for any modifications to the meeting minutes. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm going to close public comment, bring it back to the committee. Do I have a motion to approve the July 25th meeting minutes? Do we need more time on this?
I'm having a hard time opening it up with this opened. I don't know why. So if you guys have read it, I will, in the meantime.
Okay, thank you, Pew, for the screen share. And I was wondering if a member of staff could make sure that Planning Commission Chair Scharf knows about this meeting.
I did text him.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Right. I think we can move to the next page. Thank you. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the July 25th CEP meeting minutes?
Sure, I move to approve the meeting minutes.
Okay, in a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Luke, will you please conduct the roll call vote?
Yes. Vice Mayor Chow.
Aye.
Councilmember Moore.
Aye.
And Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Luke. Next, we move on to item 2, approve the June 6th CEP Strategic Advisory Committee special meeting minutes, continued from July 25th, 2022. The recommended action is to approve the June 6th CEP Strategic Advisory Committee special meeting minutes. First, we'll go to members of the public to see if there are any comments. Wait a moment to see if there's any hands raised. And not seeing any. I close public comment, bring it back to the committee. Pew, will you screen share again for this item? I see we have version 2, item 1, which is what we would be approving. Is that correct?
Correct. So the one on your screen right now is the version that you're approving.
Okay, thank you.
So this is now the red line version. So what's the difference?
I could share the other version that was from the July 25th meeting minutes. So I believe the version from July 25th was 3 pages. The one that is being approved is at least 6 pages long. So that it has more information from the meeting.
So we asked for that. I forgot, sorry.
Yes, Vice Mayor, I believe you were requesting some more information.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you for the very detailed minutes now.
Great, thank you. So do we have a motion to approve the version 2 of the draft minutes for the June 6th Community Engagement Plan Strategic Advisory Committee special meeting?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second,
Thank you. And just to clarify, this is version 2. Luke, will you please conduct the roll call vote?
Yes, Vice Mayor Chow,
aye.
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
and Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you, Luke. Next, we move on to postponements. Do any members of the committee have any postponements or any suggestions from staff for postponements? Not seeing any. Okay. Chris, I would not move to, I would not go to the public for postponement comments, would I?
No, Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we're moving on to oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any matter within the jurisdiction of the committee and not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. In most cases, state law will prohibit the commission from making any decisions with respect to a matter not on the agenda. So oral communications, and I see there are a couple of hands raised. First, we begin with Jennifer. The timer is going to be run by Pew. Pew, will you please start the timer and I will unmute Jennifer. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. I am unmuted. Yeah, thank you all for taking your valuable summertime, kids back to school, et cetera, to try to wade through this. I'm going to be honest with you. I have been very, very critical of this whole process. There's nothing you all can do about it. You just have to slug through this. But HCD now is viciously attacking the city of San Francisco very, very capriciously. For now, they're not providing enough housing quickly enough. It's getting really old. I find that since every city and county in the state is under this semblance of doom from HCD, we're all having to go through it. So it's getting to the point now where if HCD declares that they're attacking San Francisco for not producing enough housing, it's getting really old and redundant. So HCD needs to come up with a reason why they are hitting San Francisco with a stick. It's not, I'm following 10 housing elements in three to 10 different counties. And it's getting really, really suspicious to me that HCD is using cities as kind of like they're being abusive to them. And I think that HCD is taking it out on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. As you all know, that city is like a county and they have a Board of Supervisors. And I find it extremely offensive. And I think that HCD can do a better job of this, but to have announcements that San Francisco is not providing enough housing, I find it very, very, very disturbing. And I think that HCD needs to be called on it because we're having to spend our time. I didn't want to go there, money, because yes, it's jobs, it's people's time. Everybody is busy. They have other things they're doing. But all of a sudden now HCD gets to decide who they call out. And, is this a political thing? We've all been involved in this, hours and hours drama for the last year. Southern California has been subjected to this for the last 2 years. And I'm really, frankly, really getting tired of HCD acting like they were the demagogue. I mean, why is this political? But yeah, if they're starting to go out after elected people like the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, we have a much different thing going on. This is not about housing. This is political retribution. And I really want it to stop because it has gone over the edge. Anyway, those are my comments. And I think we're going down a very dangerous political slippery slope as elections come up, but I will not be voting for certain people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next, we have Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa. Pew, will you stop the clock? Yes. Okay, so we're having a little technical glitch.
Hello.
There. Okay, thank you. Welcome, Lisa.
Okay. Hi, thank you. So I would just like to, since it's not an agenda item, but I do think it's a legitimate thing to bring up here that I hope there can be a response to. So the Engage Cupertino Housing Element site now contains information of where we're at after council has made their site selections and moving forward to an EIR for the draft site. So because this is an engagement task, I think the website's really, I think it could be more helpful to people that are trying to find the information that it is most recently posted. And by that, I mean, you go into the old site, it says it's moved. That's not a problem. You hit click and it goes to another one. But then there's navy blue, dark, and I can't see my screen at the same time here. Something's happening. But there's navy blue, dark saying highlights and an August 30th council action on the site's inventory. I don't think this was posted until yesterday, actually, but I'm not clear on that because I couldn't find it before yesterday. Anyway, so you go into that and it brings up the list of explaining the sites by map number, I believe. But what you really need to do as a person looking at this website is then try to figure out, okay, there's a list, but this means absolutely nothing to me unless I can see the updated maps and other information like the spreadsheet, which after trying several times, I did find, but it would be really great if somewhere in the highlights, there's a path explained. This is where you go, because what you do is you go to this highlights where it says published list, you click on learn more, and then you just get the list. That's all you get. Oh, and links to the council meetings, which could be helpful for some people, but way time consuming if you really had to go look at those. And perhaps I'm just not, then I go to projects and it says something's wrong and it doesn't open anything. I'm not sure what that is.
Need to wrap up.
Just, if you could please, on the opening highlight page, could you please highlight the path very specifically of where you're going to find those 3 downloadable documents that are there, but people aren't going to find them. I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further hands raised, I would like staff to, if they can connect with Lisa to see what the recommendations could be to improve the user friendliness. I think that would be helpful. So is there someone who will be able to take that on?
If I may, Councilmember Moore, really briefly update you, we are looking to make some improvements to the website, and we'll be happy to make those updates and then get back to Lisa on that, if that's all right.
That sounds great. Okay, super. So with that, we close oral communications and we move on to our new business. Item 3. The subject is a report from staff in the EMC Planning Group regarding the upcoming September 26, 2022 community meeting, the results of the online housing survey, and summaries of the May 23rd and July 25th community meetings. And the recommended action is to receive the reports and provide input to staff regarding the September 26th community meeting and future community engagement opportunities. So I'll hand it over to Luke to introduce the presentations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. I think you summarized really the purpose of why we're here today. The last advisory committee meeting was on July 25th, and when we were scheduling this meeting, the goal was to have it in advance of the third community meeting that will be taking place on September 26th. So that's coming up. And if there was some confusion, I know the date September 27th had been put out there. The meeting is Monday, September 26th at 6:30. It will be a virtual meeting similar to the second meeting in July. And I think what we wanted to do was have Kylie will be running through the agenda for that meeting and the focus of that discussion. Again, it's the third in the series of community meetings we've had that are very much targeting our AFFH requirements for the housing element. So that's topic number 1 we wanted to get through today. And also we have a housing survey that was up, I forget the date, in July and ran through the month of August. We got over 200 responses to that. And I know some of the material was difficult to read, but we'll be able to go through that in a presentation form. I believe Andy will be doing that for us today. And we can go through the results of that housing survey after we've had a discussion on the community meeting on the 26th. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kylie. So since she's been doing most of the work for that third community meeting. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke. Okay, so yeah, Andy's sharing his screen with the presentation for it, I think, Andy.
Just realized I'm muted. Yes, that's right.
Okay, cool. Do you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, I'm starting not working. There we go. So this is just a reminder that it takes all of us working together to get housing built, and we value everybody's participation in their role. Kylie, would you like to review the meetings that we've had thus far and share a little about what's coming up?
Yes. So back in May, we had the first community meeting, and you might remember this focused on AFFH and the importance of including all of these different perspectives. So we had panelists who had come from many walks of life. And then most recently, we had the July 20th community meeting, which focused on the perspectives of students and older adults. So we had 2 DeAnza students, one staff member of DeAnza who does basic needs work for the students, and 2 older adults. And yeah, for any of you who were able to watch it or were in attendance, I'm sure you saw this was a really, really successful community meeting. We had a lot of attendance, and the perspectives that they shared were really valuable. And I think we'll actually be able to inform a lot of the policy that accompanies this housing element. So one thing that we were able to gather from it, and you might have seen this if you've received the report from the second community meeting. If not, I know that Andy has it and will be able to disseminate it. But we were able to get some really, really good quotations from people like the panelists, and also from the breakout rooms. We were able to get some quotations from that. So yeah, this is from the post-event survey. So we got some information from community members. And so 50% said that it had shifted or changed their understanding of the local impacts of the housing crisis. 35% said that maybe it did that, which I think is kind of like a yes, or at least a probably. And 15% said that it did not. And these are the options that we gave people for ways that they might be able to contribute to meeting the AFFH requirements. So we gave them some options, and in the poll at the end, we had them select which ways they would see themselves doing that. And hopefully giving this tangible commitment led people to actually go ahead and do these things. But there were a lot of people who said all of the above, or said that they talked to their neighbors and friends about it, said they wanted to attend another community meeting or a meeting like this, a city council meeting and things like that. And this was one that I thought was really exciting. We asked people if they had any ideas or strategies for addressing the conditions that these panelists talked about facing. And these are essentially policy ideas that came from the community from this meeting, which will be really, really important in the housing element to demonstrate that the policies in there are rooted in community input and feedback. And so this is something that we'll definitely be including along with information that the panelists shared when we build the policies in the housing element, and that follows AFFH very nicely. So on September 26th, and the flyer has actually since been updated to indicate that the meeting will go until 8:15 p.m. because our last one ran over, and we kind of figured it's better to be realistic about the timeline instead of trying to fit it within 8, because it was so successful and we want to make sure that we have time for the breakout rooms, but are being realistic about how long it takes to get the meeting started and everything. So we'll be having this meeting go until 8 p.m. And you might remember it will focus on the perspectives of people who work in Cupertino but aren't able to live there, which is a really important population and a really big one for sure. And then people who are house rich, so people who own a home but are otherwise low income. And so we've already identified a panelist who lives in a home but is a West Valley client and is low income. And already we've learned things that I had no idea about. He said that once people found out that he's low income, he's had some harassment from his neighbors, and he said that realtors contact him all the time trying to convince him to sell his home, which obviously that's a pretty big problem, and that's just something that we were completely unaware of. And so we'll be getting a lot more perspectives and thoughts from him, and we're also trying to get a lot of attendance from people who won't be panelists but who also own a home but are struggling to make ends meet. And then we're doing a lot of outreach at different restaurants and companies and just out in the community to find people who work in Cupertino but don't live there. This one has been a little trickier because by nature of West Valley's clientele, they live in Cupertino or in the area because that's who we serve. And so we're having to kind of expand our outreach capacity and strategy in order to find these people. So this is the outreach that has been completed so far. We sent a text to all clients regarding both of these things. So people who knew people who work in Cupertino but don't live there, and then individuals who are house rich, which that has been hard to find as well. We sent an email to a local business office seeking panelists and have found some interest from there. And we're hoping to identify more organizations and companies like this. We did outreach at the De Anza Market, and we found a panelist there and a lot of interest from students. The students have been really strong attendees and participants in these community meetings. We distributed flyers to West Valley Community Services clients, and an email was recently sent to the folks on the City of Cupertino email list. And this is planned outreach. I'd also, of course, be interested in hearing what other outreach you all would like to see, but we're going to be doing outreach at other Market locations. So we go all over the area, and we're going to talk to other people who go to those locations. We'll be doing outreach outside of the WVCS Cupertino office. So clients who are waiting to go into our market and things like that. That's usually a really good way and time to engage people. We'll send another mass text to clients. This is more effective than email for our clients, and we've just found that they're more responsive this way, trying to get them to register to attend the event and also to see if anyone wants to participate in a bigger way. We're working on connecting with the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce because they have all of these connections with businesses who likely are having staffing problems with people struggling to afford to live in the area. We know that that's been a big problem, and also just might be able to connect us with some business owners who could help out. We've done outreach at Cupertino stores and restaurants, and we'll be continuing to do that. So that's just begun. And we're planning to spend a lot of next week just out in the community talking to people working at these areas. We're doing more targeted outreach to home owning West Valley Community Services clients. So we're able to run reports and find them in our Salesforce database and then contact them specifically. So we've done some of that. We're going to do that more. And we'll also just be putting up flyers at coffee shops and other locations around the city to try to get community members to attend the meeting.
So I thought we might stop here and open up discussion and any other ideas that this committee would like to share.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kylie and Andy. We're going to go to members of the public. I see there's a hand raised already. So we're going to the public right now. And first we have Lisa Warren. And I'll need the timer from Pew. Thank you.
I think I'm on this time, yeah?
Yes,
Yeah.
welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. So just a couple things, and thank you, Kylie, for the report. I would be careful about, maybe there's some confusion about house rich, the term house rich, because in the first public, open meeting when it was hybrid, I was there and it came up at our table. And something you said, and maybe it was just the thing you emphasized, made me a little concerned that it's not completely understood. You can, basically what's happened all over the place is that people who have owned their homes and have owned them for a long time will say out loud, I couldn't even afford my own home if I had to buy it now. And it doesn't mean they're low income. They could still be high income. They could be moderate income. It's just the cost of housing that's gone up. So I'm grateful that this person who's, I think, going to speak at the panel can still handle their house, even though they are in a low income situation. But that's, when you're house rich, it means some different things to different people. So I would just be careful about that description, or describe it the way you're seeing it when you have this meeting, so that it's clear. And the comment about realtors contacting a homeowner all the time and trying to get them to sell, that's realtors for every homeowner, and some people that are tenants in a home and the realtors don't know it. It happens to everyone. That is not an isolated situation by any stretch. I work in the real estate industry and I get mailings every other day, if not every day. Things dropped on my door now that COVID's calmed down enough that people are doing that again. And people can they can call the agency, the brokers where they get these flyers from, or who are calling them, and tell the management, put me on a do not call list and put me on a do not distribute flyer list. You can do that. And that is supposed to be respected by the agents if they're paying attention. So if he's feeling harassed, he could take that step, or someone could take it for him. So that's just general info. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Next, we have Jennifer, and we will welcome Jennifer.
Thank you. Yes, I'm glad we're having another meeting. Those are very, very helpful. I think that Lisa's comment about the house rich is something we need to be very, very careful about the wording. You have people, my mother's 90, she's a widow, divorced, remarried, widowed, and survived another relationship. The gentleman just passed away a year ago. And she is on fixed income, but she owns a home. through, this is her, I don't know, third, fourth home. But things that she just turned 90, things that happened, when she was a young person 70 years ago, 80 years ago, 60 years ago, 50 years ago, you cannot take people buying homes or building homes or getting homes from that time period and put them in the context of today. I can understand someone maybe who's new to the country or is young or old or whatever, looking at people who are in homes today. They may not fully comprehend or understand why someone is living in a home. Someone may be renting a home. They may have been cohabitating with, a widowed boyfriend, widowed girlfriend, somebody that was 70 years old. Yes, seniors do have partners that they have relationships with, and it's complicated. You have divorces, you have people having co-tenancy in houses. It's 70 to 90 to 100 years of history, but you cannot looking at the prices today is completely different than 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And I find I will just make this comment very, very, it is naive to make comments in front of multi-generational public in Cupertino that is not addressing everyone, every age group in this city. My mother, she has her challenges in trying to stay in her home. She is on fixed income. She is a widow. And therefore, I was there one day and a realtor had called her and harassed her. It happens all the time. I have other members in my family that are afraid of people coming, calling them, putting things at their door, and they're worried that someone will take their home away. These are people that are 90 years old.
Need
So
to wrap
yes,
up,
you
Jennifer.
talk about harassment, it's happening. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Jennifer. And I'm not seeing any further hands raised. We are going to close public comment right now and bring it back to the committee. If there are any comments from the committee members at this time. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I think one thing that kind of came to mind was actually with regards to Prop 13, because in my opinion, we're looking at the case actually for it, which is interesting. And so I think it's the Prop 13 issue is it's pretty complicated. And I think that it's going off the agenda, but that was one of the first things that kind of came to mind when you're talking about people in their homes that they're struggling. And then if were they to change the Prop 13 law, that's going to be a huge financial barrier. And I have some hands raised now. I'm going to go to Luke first. Luke.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something quickly on the house rich terminology, because I think what came out of the first community meeting in May was, whatever the term is, I think what we were hearing is there's a lot of people, particularly people who bought their homes a while ago, that their home is really their primary or only asset. And I think that's the group, however you want to label it, that we're trying to address. That seems to be a very common issue too in the highest resource areas like Cupertino. So, people have a home that could be in excess of $2 million, but are not necessarily high income people or have a lot of other assets. So I just wanted to clarify that. I think that's what we're really getting at when we use that term.
Right. Thank you, Luke. Vice Mayor?
So let me find my comment. Okay. So will the third meeting be virtual or hybrid?
It will be virtual.
Only
Yeah.
because many of the likely seniors who are facing challenges that you are discussing likely have technology challenges too. and they likely won't be able to attend virtual meeting and haven't been receiving all this information. And I think HCD's guideline has been that we especially need to have meetings at different locations and provide transportations to help them attend these meetings. So I think we likely should have at least a physical location that maybe at senior center that those people to at least give them an option to attend physically. And I think some seniors have also mentioned that they don't like to attend virtual meetings, although some, like Jennifer, has been very good at attending virtual meetings, and some love them, but some still have challenge. So that's one thing I hope to consider. And then another thing is, I think I mentioned the Project Sentinel a few times. They specialize in helping both tenant and landlord, not only with dispute, but also when landlord have facing challenges of paying mortgage, and they have different kind of programs to help them. I think like getting certain cash when you are house rich, and there are programs that you can get cash out of your house in the meantime. And then I think they mentioned a new program they have is the home share program, especially low-income homeowners, if they can have the security of a third party managing the landlord-renter relationship, they are more likely to rent, so they can get that income. So they have that program. So I think we definitely have to invite someone from Project Sentinel, likely who have worked with their clients in Cupertino. They do serve Cupertino area, and maybe through them, if we can find their clients to participate, that would be great.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Kylie?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. So first, in regard to a hybrid event, I think what we found when we did that first one hybrid was first that it wasn't like we didn't get the level of attendance that we felt would have made it beneficial enough to have it hybrid, including in person. And it was just hard with the panelist format. Like if you were there in person, you couldn't really see the panelists. So we had a lot of technological difficulties that we weren't able to figure out. But I think that you make a really good point, like especially with the focus of this meeting in particular, we want to make sure that our older adults are able to attend. So I think one thing we can definitely look into doing is offering technological support to them. We have West Valley staff who we've done that for our clients in the past when we've had virtual meetings, and we can see how we can offer that to people, because I think that's definitely a challenge. And then I'll connect with Andy and Luke after this and see if it's something that we might be able to do. It's hard this close to the event, and if we aren't able to make it happen, another thing that we can do is something at the senior living center that is more focused on just receiving the feedback of individuals there, which in a way could make more sense than having a panel talk about what they might already know. And so, yeah, I think regardless, we should find a way to include older adults in the conversation, and we'll definitely look into that. And then
just a minute.
Oh, yeah, go
So
ahead.
providing technology assistant assumes they have the technology. You assume they have a cell phone or a computer that can access Zoom, which may not happen. So it's important to provide us physical location. Technology is there. Our IT department at least can help. And then people are having hybrid meeting every day. So the technology support of having hybrid meeting is there. I think, yeah, just we can figure it out. All the future meetings are going to be hybrid.
I think that the technological support was there for our first meeting. Like the city has an awesome team, but even the team wasn't able to figure out how to make it work in a hybrid setting. So that's just a challenge. And I mean, I think also there just are challenges to being an older adult with all of this. Like, how are they going to register for this if they don't have that sort of technology?
They don't register, they just come to the meeting, right?
Yeah.
That's the point. So
Mhm.
they can just come to senior center. They don't have to register. Even it were just 2 or 3 people, a lot of time our city council meeting has only a handful of people, but for those people, the ability to attend in person is important.
I'll look
Even
into
though-
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and Kylie. Tessa's had her hand raised. I'm going to move on to the housing.
Do
Sorry,
you mind if I
uh,
talk about Project
Project
Sentinel real
Sentinel,
quick?
yeah.
Oh, Tessa, is that all right if we take a moment before we hear from you? Okay. Thanks, Kylie. So we'll talk about Project Sentinel.
Thank you. Yeah, so I know that's been something that's been brought up at these meetings a few times, and it's definitely important. So we had a meeting with them a while back, and since then we have reached out a couple of times, including regarding this event specifically. And also we reached out asking about the home share program. So I couldn't find anything about the home share program online. And if any of you have any idea where I could find information about that or a connection, that would be really helpful. But we have been reaching out to Project Sentinel and have been in touch with them.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor, did you have some information to share with Kylie regarding the home share?
My understanding when I spoke to them in July is they are finalizing agreement by the end of July. So I don't know if any information is online yet. However, I wonder, have you invited a person from Project Sentinel to come? Then I think it's important both for the attendees to know what resources they offer, and also they can share their experiences working with clients. Have we reached out to them to send someone to attend the meeting?
Yeah, we've reached out to them about this meeting a couple of times and haven't heard back. I can try to reach out to maybe a different person or something. If you have any contacts for the home sharing program,
I usually
would
talk
really
to
appreciate it.
the executive director.
Okay.
She has been very responsive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can share,
Okay,
share
I'll
that
connect
offline.
with you.
Okay, thank you. And okay, so thank you, Housing Commission Chair Parrish, for waiting patiently.
No worries.
You're up.
Thank you. So I actually did want to support and second what the Project Sentinel, they came and gave a presentation to the Housing Commission a few years back, and they are wonderful. They're just a huge resource for people. And the elderly are extremely vulnerable. They require a lot of help. They don't understand things quickly. You have to speak slowly to them. And so I also wanted to really, really support the idea of having it at least in the senior community center in person, so that they know, like she said, even if there are 5 people that are being targeted, and Project Sentinel could give them resources. I believe there's a advocate program because they get targeted. For example, the reverse mortgage. If they're low on income and they need that a lot, they prey on them, and it's horrible. So I believe there's a project that can protect them from people that are trying to take advantage of them, so that it goes through someone that's overseeing it. They're too old and they need help. So they are very well versed in social services that they might need, as well as they themselves could be a huge resource. My mom is elderly, and let me tell you, it's another world on how you got to talk to them. And it's true, they're technological. It's not just providing technology support. They need it in person. They need a real flyer that needs to be in big print, that kind of thing. So just that's all I wanted to say. Project Sentinel is really a must to be a panelist, and maybe Vice Mayor Chow, maybe you can arrange it, and if they are already talking to you, that way, I don't know, just an idea. Thank you.
Thank you. And is Ride Reach Your Destination Easily? Is that conducted through West Valley Community Services? So
Yeah,
okay, so you might already have some of the clients that you know of through the RIDE program to reach out to.
yeah. And there's actually a flyer for it up in the vehicle too.
Okay, awesome. I thought that would be like the perfect. And then, well, as to the micro transit, we have the VIA shuttle. So if you do run something, depending on the individual's mobility needs, there's a way for them to travel to wherever this would be. And I see our planning manager, Pugh Ghosh, has her hand raised.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Moore. There are a couple of things that I wanted to add to this discussion in terms of the ability for us to have an in-person session for the 26th. We'll have to discuss internally to see whether that can be accommodated given the logistics of having to do that. So, and then the limitations potentially from our IT team, but we will certainly evaluate and consider that the feedback for sure. With regard to the focus on the seniors, I did want to remind the committee that the last AFFH meeting that was hosted was specific to seniors in general. I also heard some feedback about providing information from Project Sentinel to the attendees. Again, the focus of this is to get input from the attendees on their challenges regarding housing and not necessarily providing them with resources at this point. All of those things are all very good ideas and certainly something that the city can evaluate and maybe incorporate as programs and policies targeting education to these service groups. But that's not the focus of this particular meeting that the city is looking to host. So that was just my input on this particular discussion.
All right, thank you, Pugh. And let me look at the list to see who's up next. And I have a hand raised from Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
Vice Mayor Chow had her hand up first, but I just wanted to clarify, my suggestion was for the senior center not to be a hybrid, just so if the problem is getting IT there, I would just do it in person with them and then take all that info. And that's also goes for the other meetings that you're considering. Maybe just separate them. Whoever wants to go virtual, go virtual, and then whoever wants to go in person, go person, rather than to try to make everyone work together. I think that's an added, you know what I mean, an added headache. Just an idea. Thank you.
Thank you. I do see a hand raised. I'm going to briefly go back to the public and before we move on to the next portion of the presentation. So I see a hand raised from Lisa Warren. I'm opening this back up for public comment. So we'll need a timer. And as soon as the timer's up, we'll start. Okay. Hey, welcome, Lisa. Yes.
Hi, thanks. Really quickly, I don't know if it's doable at this point, but there's a potential for having staff, whether it's senior center staff or someone else or a volunteer at the senior center in one of their rooms where they can project potentially the screen and have them all Zoom together. I don't know if there's time to get enough people interested in doing that, but that way, if this person could raise their hand for so-and-so and they could speak, or these people could just listen and they could talk amongst themselves if they're comfortable being together. And again, it may be too late to try to arrange something like that, but it wouldn't have to be in person at City Hall, community center, be at senior center with someone moderating for a group of people that aren't comfortable with all of this. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Not seeing any further hands raised from the public. I'm closing public comment, moving back, and I see first, Andy, your hands raised.
Yes, thank you. Unfortunately, when I clicked to lower it, it took me into my PowerPoint, and that was it. I just wanted to remind you that we do have more presentations specific to the survey when the chair desires.
Okay, thank you. So Vice Mayor, before we move on to the next portion, you have a moment to add on.
Just want to add, I was trying to find so the city does a 5-year CDBG plan, consolidated plan, and also an annual plan. I remember in one of those plans, we have a list of consultants who do get the funding and we work with to help this many people. Project Sentinel was one of them that I happened to come across and talk to. There were others, not just Project Sentinel. And I feel like we have not reached out to them. So they likely have their clients who they have helped over the years. And I think the city probably should make effort to reach out to this hard to reach population. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And we'll move over to Andy for the next part of the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Mark. So we presented in an earlier Strategic Advisory Committee meeting about a housing survey that we have since added to our website and invited people to fill out. And we, as Luke mentioned, we got more than 200 responses. The survey was available online for over a month. And the narrative responses were made available in full text as a separate document, but we have this presentation just to give a little bit of an outline of who participated with this. So it's similar to the narrative responses that we received from the report for each of our community meetings. We're also looking to this narrative when we consider policy ideas, and we'll be providing as part of an appendix to our housing plan that through line, which we know HCD would like to see. So we get an idea of who it was that chose to self-selected to participate in this survey. We wanted to be as inclusive as possible, and that was an idea that came out of this meeting. So we made sure that this enabled people to check all that apply. We can see as far as demographics that this is different than the majority Asian population that we know to be here in Cupertino. So it's important that we understand who this population is and relative to who the Cupertino population is. Excuse me. This is a population that does not see themselves as living in a crowded space. I'm going to cough. Excuse me. And it's predominantly single-family homeowners that responded to this survey. Predominantly owner-occupied living experiences and full-time employment. So we have over 30% of the people who responded both live and work in Cupertino. Right around 30% that live but potentially do not work in Cupertino, and nearly 30%, excuse me, I had that reversed. Oh, I see. Oh, 30%, just over 30% live in Cupertino but work elsewhere, and just nearly 30% who live in Cupertino and do not work. These are longtime residents of Cupertino, nearly half of which lived more than 20 years in Cupertino. And more than half who do work in Cupertino have only worked there for less than 2 years. What I've done here is highlighted those that received the highest ranking in responses. So in answer to this question, if you live in Cupertino, pick the top 3 goals based on importance to you and your family. So the top 4 goals were preserving the current scale and massing of single-family neighborhoods, limiting growth in hillsides and areas at risk for wildfire, also limiting height to preserve the suburban scale and massing, and providing a diverse range of housing types to meet the needs of people at all incomes. This last one was actually the most popular one. Nearly 50% of all respondents chose this one, which is good because this is aligned with what HCD would like us to see us bring forward with our housing plan. If you live in Cupertino, why did you choose to live here? Safety, low crime, proximity to work, and quality of schools. These were the top 3. And here we see the order. There were a few others that were just close behind, like neighborhood safety. And as Lee can attest, in our outreach in general for housing elements, we're hearing from both established neighbors and those who would like to belong to communities that are reevaluating their housing plan right now. Safety is a shared concern for both current and future neighbors. If you wish to own a home in Cupertino, but do not, what issues are preventing you at this time? Many people cannot find a home within the target price range, or they cannot afford money for down payment, or they get outbid for homes by institutional investors or others able to pay cash. And here we can see how those fit in. We did, for many of these categories, you'll see we allowed for an other, and that makes it difficult sometimes for us to be able to see all of the comments, which is why we also made available the PDF, because we do find all of those comments to be interesting and valuable. So we wanted to make sure that everybody could read those. If you wish to rent a home in Cupertino, but do not, the most common issue preventing folks is that they cannot find a home within the target price range. If you could afford to live in Cupertino, but don't want to, please let us know why. You can get better housing for your money in other cities, lack of high quality mass transit, and too few retail options were the highest ranking responses. As Cupertino plans to meet the RENA number of 4,588, which types of additional housing would you like to see in the city of Cupertino? So this I find a little interesting, that diversity of housing type was a high ranking response to the other question. And with this one, we're seeing that townhomes and single family, also subsidized housing for older adults and subsidized rental apartments. These are the highest ranking ones, but we can see that there are several others that are fairly high responses as well. So I think in total, this does reflect a diversity of housing, and we can just see the more higher ranked choices. Again, we have a lot of comments that are responsive to the other category, and you can see those in the PDF that was attached as a desk item. What do you believe are the most urgent housing concerns in Cupertino? Housing affordability and housing availability were the highest ranked ones for that. Of course, homelessness, overcrowding, and housing quality, as far as not enough home ownership opportunities, those were also relatively selected at a high rate. What do you believe is the biggest challenge for addressing the living and housing needs of lower income adults? lack of housing where services are within walking distance, lack of affordable older adult housing, increased costs for goods and services. These were the highest ranking options that people selected. Retrofitting assistance also was relatively highly ranked. The city of Cupertino is required for at least 4,588 additional housing units. What do you think are the best strategies? Increase density, allow taller buildings with more housing units, and increase the number of affordable units for all new project, which is also understood as inclusionary housing. These were the highest ranked. And the numbers were close to and one a little over 50% of those submittals that we received. Again, we did receive a lot of narrative that we're also paying attention to. Housing in Cupertino is very expensive. How can home prices and rents be reduced? The most popular option was to increase the required percentage of below market rate housing on new projects. And that's a little more than 50% of the submittals we received that suggested that. Of course, this can sometimes be detrimental for the construction of housing, and that's because it can be a deterrent, a constraint for developers. So this is something that that is a delicate balance for how we can make something that's create policies and programs that enable that feasibility for development to be constructed. Below market rate housing is required as a percentage of units when more than 7 units are built. Generally, Cupertino requires 15% for rentals and 20% for ownership units are dedicated to BMR units. And the required percentage of affordable units is too low and should be increased, is the opinion that we heard most commonly. Following our presentation, I do want to invite staff to comment if they're aware of where we might go with that as well. If you live in Cupertino and work, how many miles do you commute one way to work or to school? And we've got a fairly even distribution here, with nearly 30% at less than 1 mile, though we also have almost 24% that travel more than 10 miles. How do you most often commute to work or school? And we can see that a single occupancy vehicle is the most common response at almost 66%. How many vehicles does your household lease or own? The most common answer was 2. We can see that it's more than 1 is absolutely the majority here. 1 or more, I should say, and 20% have 3. How many parking spaces do you need at your residence to accommodate your building, or excuse me, to accommodate your vehicles? Nearly 50% need 2, 21% only 1. We have 21% with 3, and very small percentage for 0, and even less for 4 or more. Do you have work vehicles, either you own or your companies, that you must park at your place of residence? More than 92% said no. What would encourage you to consider taking public transit instead of using a private vehicle? Increased frequency of service, faster service, routes that go from home to work without multiple transfers. These were the most popular responses for this transit consideration. And that concludes our presentation for responses. We're open to questions and feedback.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Andy. That was a great presentation and a lot of data. Really great to see it. A lot of food for thought there. So we're going to move first to members of the public for questions and comments. First, we have Jennifer. We'll wait for the timer to show up. There it is. Perfect. And we'll allow Jennifer to speak. There we go. Welcome, Jennifer.
Yes, thank you. My husband has a master's degree and worked in statistics and analysis. And I'm very, very familiar because I helped edit most of his master's, or he got his master's degree just 10 years ago. So I actually had to do a lot of the correcting work when he was getting it. So I've learned a lot about statistics. Plus I used to tutor statistics in school. But this was a very good survey. I've seen some very interesting examples of surveys, but this one was very good. I just have a couple of comments. One of them is that nowhere in the survey did it say, and I did take the survey, do you agree with the 5,400 homes that are being required of Cupertino by HCD? Now, to me, that's kind of like we had a captive audience in that there were questions that people were being asked their comment on, but we didn't have any way to say, I disagree with this number. I think that there was an audit done of these numbers and it came up lacking. So that there was a problem there in terms of who the control audience was. But I think that in terms of like when I got my first job, I had to move to an area that was affordable, which was the county where I rented for 15 years before I bought my home. I was in the county, in the area I'm in now, and I got out at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was working graveyard. So I had to have a car. I was in an area that was, my neighborhood of Rancho Rinconada was a drug zone. We had murders in here. So I had to move. I couldn't afford to where my parents had lived. I couldn't afford to live where my mother lived. I had to go somewhere where I could afford to rent. And I was a female driving home at 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning when that poor dear soul girl was killed on El Camino at the golf course, which they just found the murderer. Now you can understand why you have to, I think that in some ways, how HCD is approaching this whole thing is very myopic. They're saying we have to take the people now and we will look at, we're frozen in time. You have adults now that are in housing situations for whatever reason. But that's one of my main comments about this survey. But that's my lived reality. And I don't think that HCD is on board with a lot of the general public that they think that they have an idea. They don't know us at all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Wait a moment to see if there are any other hands raised for this portion of the presentation. And I'm not seeing any other hands raised. We're going to close public comment and bring it back to the committee. Okay, do we have any committee members who'd like to have their questions or comments heard?
I
Okay.
do.
All right, okay, Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
Just a quick suggestion. This is a great survey. I just would like to recommend that our planning commission representatives are here, that they have it included in their package when they're actually planning for the housing that's going to happen. Of course, because I find it extremely interesting of the use of cars and vehicles and people wanting mostly single family homes and that kind of thing, but mainly the parking. So I know that a lot of the construction going on is requesting less and less parking. And I really don't think it's a good idea. So I just wanted to throw that out there to make sure that, and I'm sure they will, but I just found it very interesting what Cupertino is looking like and what they want. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think the parking is an interesting issue. We're not able to veer into the policy issue or site selection for our purposes, but I think that's a really good point. And I also really like the comment section that we have in the agenda packet, so that we can read what people had to say. I'm hoping that because what I liked in the report from Andy was the where you highlighted the top ones, and if we could have that included in the written communications, perhaps, I think that would help, because that helped me a lot, because I was looking at the sentences and they had to be abbreviated because of the space issue, and then I was kind of flipping through. But what you showed actually really helped to show what the top 3 or 4 items were. I was a little surprised how many people only were like less than a mile to go to work. That really surprised me in terms of our transportation issues and making it bikeable and walkable, that there is a good chunk of the population here that really does need that. They're not commuting out 20 miles. But by the way, going back to the distance chart, I don't know if you can pull it up quickly. I don't know if you had a like a maximum distance. You do have over 10 miles. I guess I would sort of like to know if we have super commuters that live in Cupertino, just out of curiosity, because we hear so much about the super commuters coming into the Bay Area. Do we actually have super commuters that are living here? So it's greater than 10. I wish there was like a cap, or maybe put 20 or 30 or something in the future. But there's actually a good number of people that travel more than 10 miles. So perhaps it's to Palo Alto or up on the East Bay as well. Yeah. The blue section, 30% less than a mile. That's amazing. All right. Vice Mayor Chow. I'll wait.
Oh, sorry, I'm muted.
That's
Okay. So, so there are only 205 responses. And that's not, it's thank you for the great presentation. It's really good highlight of all the responses. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I agree that if you can share your final representation, that would be great. And 205, I think with our population, it's not statistically, it's not representative, right? So, but it's still interesting data to have. And then the presentation says the text is available in another attachment. I didn't find that. Is there another one sent later? I looked at the agenda packet online. I see a presentation and then the summary about the previous two community meetings, but I did not see. I think someone referenced the PDF of all the responses.
Through the chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
It's part of the written communications, I believe.
Oh, not the agenda packet.
No, it is not part of the agenda packet, but it is part of the written communications that posted with the agenda materials online.
Oh, okay. And then I wonder, can we get the full data set? This data just is very interesting. So we can maybe as an exercise, someone can analyze it at different, like for example, among all the homeowners, what do they think? Among all the non-homeowners, they might have different perspectives. I think that would be interesting. So could we also get the raw data set of the questionnaire?
We can provide an Excel spreadsheet that has all the data set. I'm fairly
That would be
certain
awesome.
that Luke and Andy, I'm looking to you both.
Yeah, we can get that.
Okay, thank you. So can that be provided for the public as well, or would it just be for the committee?
We can send it to the committee in an Excel format. I think when it's posted online at the on the website, though, it kind of tends to become a PDF on the Laserfish side. We can maybe make it available on the website.
Okay,
Okay, that would be awesome. And I think the questions are great. However, I do realize that Andy mentioned that we have a majority Asian population, but the respondents are mostly white. And then when I look at the question of, do you consider your living condition crowded? Then I realize coming from Asia, with especially from very dense populated country, your idea of what's spacious is different. Even in Europe, I lived in Europe for 2 years. There, they consider their kitchen is minuscule, but they has everything. But their idea of comfortable in here might be crowded. So when you ask someone, their background might affect how they answer a question. Like here, all the shampoo bottles are so big because you have so much space. But in Europe, they will come in very tiny bottles because you don't have a lot of cupboard space. So that's one thing. And then another question about how many vehicles your household own. It seems we're assuming everyone's household is the same size. You can have a household of 1 person. You can have a household of 2 person. You can have a household of 8 people. With grandparents and kids, right? So I wonder if it might be like a vehicle per adult. That might be more accurate of way of framing this kind of question. But I know that the way it's asked is a common way a lot of survey questions are asked, but it's just, yeah, it made me think of how we interpret the data. Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you for the great survey.
great.
And if we can somehow do a better job getting more people to respond, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Yeah, I think the outreach has been a challenge with so many projects going on in the city to capture people's attention, especially with all the festivals all opening up and people wanting to go do other things. And I think it's been challenging with everything opening up. Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
Yeah, just as Vice Mayor Chow was speaking, I realized the same thing, that it showed that most of the respondents were white Caucasian. And if you look at the demographics of the city of Cupertino, it is 69.23 Asian and only 24.98 are white. And then the rest of the percentages. And so I was thinking, what it does show is that we were very successful at getting to the Caucasian community. Is there, maybe we could use that information to get to our next survey or our next contact the residents, maybe Asian market, just figure out how we can contact more of the population to increase it, but reach out more to the Asian community. I just did as she was saying that, it was disproportionately incorrectly kind of like to what we have demographically. That's, thank you.
May I ask, was the survey just in English?
This one, yes. The survey that we provided earlier through WVCS was available in 5 different languages.
Okay. And are the results of that survey, are they on the through the Engage Cupertino? You can get to those.
I believe so, but we are doing an audit of our survey of our website right now, so that's a good thing for us to also make sure that it's not too buried, and that we post all of our survey results in the same place so that people can compare and contrast and collate together.
Okay, and I did notice when I landed on the webpage, all the multiple languages. So yes, so I think probably having this survey in more than one language would perhaps have helped to widen the net of respondents moving forward. And vice,
We can still do that
oh,
if that's,
so you could release the survey again, you're saying?
that's certainly a possibility. If staff and the committee supports that, we can work with our interpreters, our translators rather, and have this translated into other languages.
And
I
I
see
see,
Pete's hands, right?
yeah,
I just wanted to caution, and we'll have to discuss this before we put it out again, just in terms of budget and time. I do want to make sure that we have both of those in order to incorporate that into our schedule and make it available. And not that I'm suggesting that we don't make it available, we just need to have a discussion to make sure that we are able to do that. Commit
Okay.
to doing it.
Thank you, Pew. In the past, have we, when we're putting out surveys and questionnaires, like there was one, for instance, I believe about Blackberry Farm Golf Course, fairly recently. I don't know what our standard practice is, and so maybe that's something that we need to just talk
Right.
about
We
policy
can
wise.
certainly do that. Yes. Again, I just want to make sure that we do what we do for our projects, but we also have budget and time built into our process for this project as well.
Right, understanding our time constraints, absolutely. So we're back to Vice Mayor.
So, yeah, I think this sets of survey questions are good. And yeah, it would be great if we can collect more data. It take time to develop the questions. If only 200 people responded, that's kind of a waste of resource to develop them. And then, so in some way, additional time to collect more responses actually makes our time more worthwhile. That's something to consider. And as for response rate, I'm not sure language barrier is the barrier for response, but then one thing is, at least for Chinese, people tend not complain, not respond until something they feel is terribly wrong. So that's tend to be the way. So if they think they are happy with everything, they usually don't respond. So how do we? So I think most of the household, they are pretty good English. There people who need to read in Chinese are a small percentage. So I don't think that's a barrier. It might be just a culture. Culturally, they are not as involved in public policies, but I think probably white Caucasian population are more actively involved with public policies. That might be a culture difference. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I think also a California thing as well, that you need to step up, or somebody else will speak up for you. Okay, Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
I'm sorry, real quick. I though that may be true, Vice Mayor Chow, I do think that the language is a way to get to that community, even though they speak English. I think if they finding where they are located and communicating in there. For example, candidates for city council will literally send, postcards in Chinese, in other languages, because there is such a large population that won't pay attention, but if it's in their language, it's addressed to them. So I actually, just 69% of our population is Asian. I really think it should be a standard for the city to do any survey in their language, in whatever language that is. I hadn't realized about that, but that's just my input. Thank you.
Thank you. There might be something within the census data for what's spoken at home, or with regards to language. usage that we could draw upon as well. I see Pew's hand is raised.
Thank you, Chair Mora. I did want to point out one other thing. I believe we could also look to see how many people have engaged with our website in other languages. I don't believe it has been used. It is available in different languages, and I don't believe that the interest has been in those particular languages that are online. And so as a result, I don't know if it's worth it to put in more resources in a different language if the interest has not been that high, but we'll look into that and see whether it makes sense or not.
But if the website wasn't promoted to them in their language, then that would, again, if it's not addressed to them, they may not do that. Just an idea. I really think that that's kind of a missing factor there. Because it's a cultural thing, like Vice Mayor Chow said, it's a cultural thing. They don't do any of those things unless but when it's addressed to them in their language and or where they shop, I think it'll make a difference. That's all.
That's an interesting point. We're supposed to be having some website updates, and that's some good feedback too. If you're able to go to our city website, which I don't believe you are now, able to click on a different language and have it show up. So there's no so there's a sense of belonging, and you don't have that sense that you've got a barrier there of some sort. Andy, your hand's raised.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. So I just wanted to support Pew in her idea that in looking at our website, I do want to remind everyone that we did send out a postcard early on in multiple languages, inviting people to come to the website, so we can look at our data and see what kind of responses we did receive in different languages, going back to when that postcard was first issued in the languages, so that we can test this and report back.
Thank you, Andy. And I think having some more mention about that and how the different languages that were used throughout this process for the outreach, I think that's a good information. And if we can get some feedback as well, perhaps IT can provide it. I don't know who would provide this, but if we can get a little feedback for what was the reach, how many people wanted to try out the website in the different languages, that'd be interesting feedback as well, because I don't think there's been a discussion about this it's not since I've been on council about the language and outreach so far. So I think it's an interesting topic, and I hopefully will continue this conversation moving forward. So with that, Andy, is there another portion to the presentation? How are we doing?
No, we've completed this early.
Wow, good job. Okay, so we have finished item 3, and our objective recommended action was to receive the reports and provide input to staff regarding the September 26th community meeting and the future community engagement opportunities. Andy, will you please give another shout out for the where the people who want to participate can do so, and the time?
Yes, I will bring us back to that flyer. For some reasons, I'm gonna try it. Yes. So I'm going to invite Kylie to describe this, because she is the lead for this, and we're very excited to have WVCS as part of our team. Will you do this the honors?
Yes, so describe the flyer or describe the meeting?
The meeting, well,
Okay.
and the flyer, just
I guess
so everybody has a
relate.
warm welcome to join. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think that one thing I took from the public comment is we might need to be really clear about the definition of house rich, or just not really use that term. And so I would say we'll describe it as people who own a home in Cupertino but are otherwise low income. And so it focuses on them, and then people who work in Cupertino but cannot afford to live in the city. And I think the agenda popped up a little bit earlier, but we're going to start just with the community agreements and a basic introduction to the meeting, and then go straight into breakout rooms. And these breakout rooms will prepare community members for what they'll be discussing, or what they'll see discussed during the panel and what they'll be discussing afterward. And so, yeah, I think Andy's trying to pull the agenda up. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so the first breakout rooms will be 30 minutes. Yeah, I think that's what, oh no, wait, 10 minutes. Okay, I was like 30 is way too long for that. So the first breakout rooms will just be 10 minutes, and it's the same groups in the first and second breakout room. So this is so that they get to know each other and just talk a little bit about what they know going into it, so that they can gauge that. And so that after the panel, they're able to dive into conversation rather than having to also get to know each other and everything. And after the first breakout room, the panel will go for 50 minutes, and this will be right along the lines of the other panels that you've seen. So we'll have questions that we ask the panelists, and they'll be talking about their own experiences and sharing whatever information they want to, which has always just ended up being really valuable. And so we'll be asking them some questions. And then after that, there will be time for a 35-minute breakout room, which I'm really excited about because they in the past have always ended up being too short, even when we intentionally lengthened them last time. And so there will be a lot of time for community members to talk with each other about what they learned in the panel, how it relates to their own experiences, and if they are in similar situations to any of the panelists, they can share that. Or if they weren't even aware of this, it being a thing, they'll talk about that. And so we'll also be taking thorough notes in each of those breakout rooms so that we're able to include that in our housing element and in the report. And after that, we'll say thank you and good night at 8:15 p.m.
And if I could just tag on and support, yes, that second breakout room, we get such valuable information coming out of that. You can just see it sparks curiosity and innovation, and we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome there. Those who are gregarious and love to speak, and those who more often shy away from these kinds of experiences. There's no obligation that you have to speak. You can come and witness and just be a part of this learning, growing process. And all of this is very valuable information that is leading directly to our policymaking process. So we warmly welcome everyone to join us, and we greatly value all of the information and personal stories that you bring to these meetings. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Andy and Kylie. And Andy, will you be starting the meeting with comments about that? I really appreciated what you're saying about you can if your comfort level essentially.
Absolutely. We want to make sure that everyone can not feel obligated to step outside of who they are, and that they bring forward their best ideas and or just witness others through this process. And you can always email us afterwards, share a comment.
Terrific. And will you be speaking about policy suggestions somewhat? I'm kind of hoping we'll get some ideas, actually. That's
yes.
that.
It's great when our ideas are truly coming from the place of understanding each other's needs. So it gets dangerous if we leap too quickly into solution. But often at the end of those breakout sessions, it's just a natural occurring part of the process. So that's when the best ideas really start flowing.
Okay, great. Kylie?
Yeah, and we also, I would say, ask for policy ideas without asking for them. So saying, what ideas do you have to make these situations easier for people like the panelists or stuff like that? And they pretty much are saying policies without even being aware of it. And so we will really, really try to get some policy ideas out of this meeting.
Okay. And when I'm not looking at the invitation. When you say workers in Cupertino, these are commuters.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just curious if we've got any well, how far they're commuting. If we have super commuters, I would really like to hear what they have to say, and some thoughts on, why are you going so far, and what are the problems, what's causing this type of thing.
Yeah, I can't believe we haven't been using the word commuter. Thank you. That's perfect. Definitely. And yeah, super commuters will be an important group to target.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And Vice Mayor?
So I assume you reach out to all the school employees in different school districts, the Yanza, and because they have their own employees of the area, right? And I have to say, I think one public comment mentioned flyers should be in big font. So that made me take a look at the flyer. First of all, the website is not there. I think you always want to put the website on the flyer and don't assume people already know about past meetings. Maybe they want to find out what happened in the previous 2 meetings. So have the website there, and also looking at the flyer, just there are a lot of words I have to read in very detail, the very long text to find out what exactly is the focus of the meeting. But from first glance, I'm not attending this meeting. Housing element something I don't understand. So I don't know if there is still time, but if we can make the flyer a bit more friendly to people who are not as involved in the process and to really understand what's the focus of this meeting, rather than having to read a very long paragraphs. And bigger font, maybe they need a big font version. Yeah, thank you.
Hugh?
Yes, I just wanted to summarize so I can summarize the input that we're getting. Bigger text, less words, if it's still possible to update the flyer. That's kind of the
And include the website.
and the website.
Always include the website. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that Kylie has that information.
Okay, and this is for Monday, so yeah, this is
I did add if possible.
okay. Well, so to check my calendar here. So it is a week from this Monday, correct? We've got a week from Monday, so we might have a chance to have another, if you're using the city's social media, you might have an opportunity to have another shout out to the public, let them know, and with that, perhaps with some extra information there, that might help with the outreach. There are some, I call them storyboards. I don't think that's the right term. Lean-to boards on the Civic Center Plaza. And I thought that your nice poster advertisement could, with that QR code, if there's a will to do that might be helpful, since you do have a little bit of time left, because there's so many people walking to go to the library and City Hall. That might be a place you could do that, or add a little yard sign or something. Yeah, okay. Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
Yeah, so I think that maybe what Vice Mayor Chow, correct me if I'm wrong, you were trying to just get like the catch me phrase or catch me kind of flyer, part of the flyer, right? The first page that gets with the marketing that says within the first 5 seconds, you decide whether or not.
Yeah, the first 5 seconds you
Right.
can
You grab
tell
it, you look
this
at
is
it on its way
what
to
is,
garbage can.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that-
so 5 seconds you want people to get, oh, this is what that's about. I'm interested. Then you could have some smaller farms that tell them more, but you need to catch them first.
Exactly. It's just a bit more marketing kind of thing. So that's all I wanted to clarify, that it is, I agree. It needs a little more of a housing element, community meeting, so they know they're included, I don't know, something like that.
Thanks, that's all.
Thank you so much. I like that. Next, we move on to staff and committee reports. Do we have any staff and committee reports?
No, there are no additional staff reports.
All right, then the next item is future agenda setting. And are we planning to have a follow-up meeting to hear how the 26th meeting went? And then what kind of outreach will be going on after? And that's a question for staff. Are we planning to have another meeting as a follow-up?
Yeah, it would make sense to have a follow-up. I think, I don't know how soon it needs to be after the meeting on the 26th. And I would also think at that time too, because that would be our 8th meeting and a lot of the community engagement will have taken place. I don't know how we would sort of bring closure to this, if there would be a report back to council, say, on the accomplishments of the committee. That would make sense to me anyhow. So I'm just putting that out there, that you might want to be thinking about where this goes from here, or does the committee, is this essentially going to be the final meeting of the committee?
Okay, I would like to have the follow-up meeting for closure. And that would be sometime in October. We could try to do a similar time frame. If there's any, we could try like a Friday the 14th. If that could work for anyone. Andy, your hand's raised.
My request might be to have it be closer to maybe the 21st. We want to make sure that WVCS has enough time to do their report, and for all of us to put, consolidate all of this information, or even the 28th, so that we can be inclusive of all the great work that we've been doing for these several months.
Okay, so Friday the 28th puts us right at the end of the month. Is there a preference between the 28th or the 21st? Housing Commission Chair Parish?
I was
did you
just the staff's perspective, ma'am. I
please.
just see Commissioner Parrish's hand up, so I will wait.
Oh, so no, either of those days are fine with me, 21st or 28th. My only idea or thought was, I think the purpose of this meeting was just whatever the purpose was in writing, fair housing, how we outreach and all those things. Maybe even write a memorandum or something like a final report to council so they see what was done. I think that might summarize it for them as well. That's all.
If I may suggest, Chair, I served on a committee once, and once it kind of for closure, there was more of a presentation to the body that it reported to, as opposed to like a written report. But that I will leave that to the committee members to decide. It might be easier in a presentation to kind of walk the council through what has happened so far, because all of the input and all of the reports that you've seen here will be wrapped up into that draft housing element anyway. So that would be my suggestion. And in terms of timing on the next meeting, I would suggest October 28th. I just want to support Andy in his idea to allow enough time to WBCS to prepare their report, and would allow staff time to review those reports and put everything together.
Okay, thank you, Pugh. So you're suggesting October 28th and essentially a PowerPoint compilation of the reports that we've been reviewing here, pretty much, as opposed to just a memo.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, that might be more interactive and interesting for council as a whole.
Correct. And you can self-select who will present that PowerPoint to council, maybe. One of the committee members can do that as a wrap-up of the committee work.
Okay, well, we can talk about that on the 28th when we get a look at it. And I have a couple of hands raised. First, I'm going to go to Kylie.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I'm busy from 1 to 2 on the 28th. And so I could come at 2 and do the presentation then, or like just plan or however around that. Yeah.
Okay, so would 10 to 12 work?
Yeah.
Okay, will 10 to 12 work for the committee on, or no?
I can do 10. So would later in the afternoon work? 4 to 6 or
Okay.
We
later?
could also start at 11, ma'am. We could do the 11 to 1 that we've done in the past, potentially.
11. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so 11 to 1, Kylie, will that make, okay, it'll work. Okay, so 11 to 1. Yes, okay, 11 to 1 on the 28th. I've got lots of thumbs up. Okay, so we've got our future agenda setting down and the topics, we've got that set. Correct? We're all, there's Vice Mayor, your hand's still raised? Yes?
Yeah. So I think I've been asking, when is the fair housing assessment going to be ready? Because I see other cities have that ready quite early, so they can use that to make decisions. So I'm still wondering what's the schedule on that? And I think you mentioned the root science. Is that's going to become back in May? I thought they are going to make a presentation in May. That didn't happen, so I'm just wondering, are we still contracted with them? And
I can help
will we
answer.
get data? What kind of data are we getting from them? When would we get those? Yeah, thank you.
I can help answer those. Both of those reports will be part of the draft housing element. As soon as that is ready, we're still in the process of receiving information from our consultants. And so when we put everything together, we will be presenting that as a package.
Pew, may I ask a quick question?
So
Sorry, Vice Mayor.
I'm confused because what I see in other cities, usually it's fair housing assessment is ready first. Then they talk about housing policies. And then you have draft housing element.
Every city does it differently, Vice Mayor. There is no set process for how this works. In our case, as you are aware, we are running rather late in our schedule for preparing a draft housing element. We do have to have this completed as soon as possible. We're trying our best to do it the right way, but then there is no set way. And like I said, some cities are doing it the way that you're suggesting that they're doing it, and others are not.
So we won't see the assessment any earlier.
Correct.
Until
Yeah,
the draft is ready.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
until the draft
and
housing
the,
element is ready.
right. And the consideration that we looked at for proceeding in this direction are timing, because of course, you know, we are behind. And then second, the opportunity for the full council to have the ability to review a draft housing element before it goes to HCD.
I don't mean the draft housing element. I mean the fair housing assessment. That usually has to be done way before the draft housing element.
It will be part of the draft housing element.
Okay.
There are a number of different approaches, but we thought those two concerns were important, and so that was that is what's driving the process that, you know, we've discussed with the city manager.
Okay.
I just have a quick question about the draft EIR, and when I believe we're going to have a 30-day review period. Is that correct? And I'm trying to gauge when we might have the draft EIR.
So we are beginning the processes of mobilizing on the draft EIR so that we can get everything started. There are actually two different public noticing periods. We are required by state law to have a 30-day notice on the draft housing element, and we're required to have a 45-day public comment period on the draft EIR. So those are two different public notices, or rather public comment periods, but they address two different issues. Same project, just different focus.
Okay, so we've got draft housing element 30 days and the draft EIR 45 days.
And Andy he's raising his hand quite desperately there.
Okay, great. Andy,
I-
which comes
Sure.
first in this process?
Well, as far as comes first, we'll be issuing an NOP, and there will be a 30-day period with a scoping meeting probably in the middle of it. That's typically what we do. So what we're trying to make sure of, as much as we possibly can, is to not have our two public comment periods overlapping, because it can be very confusing to everyone, and we don't want to double up on all of our public comments. So as much as we can, we'll try to keep our EIR 30-day public comment period for the NOP separate from the public version of the housing plan, the housing element update, which is a required 30-day period as well. So they're going to be coming up fast, and they'll not be overlapping as much as we can help it, but they will probably be touching. They'll probably be very close to each other.
Okay, so it's likely that the housing element draft will see first and then 30 days and then go into the EIR. Does that sound more likely?
We're still working out on those timings. Stay
Okay.
tuned is the best that I can say at this point.
I see
Okay.
Chris talking, but I can't hear him. So I think he
I
has
was
something to add.
I'm just wondering if there's some process that the order that is expected. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, we're getting there. I'm sure the council and as well as Commissioner Paris will be receiving updates on it. I would say that we'll find a forum to communicate this information to everybody, but we are starting to stray pretty far from what's on the agenda.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chris. Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
Not sure if and did the attorney just say we could not discuss the fair housing assessment and order of it? Is that what I just heard?
I think that's getting a little bit far from the agenda, and I don't think we necessarily have all of the answers that you might want anyway at this point. So for those two reasons, I would recommend not doing it.
Okay, so I thought this portion was for future agendas and what we were planning for the summary. That's how it came up. And whether or not we needed the fair housing before. So here's my only thought, because I thought part of the advisory committee was to present everything towards the final plan. And so my question is, if we're not going to get it, do we need a joint session with City Council? And so this is part of what I'm saying for future agenda items in that category. And
so, yeah. So sorry. So the advisory committee was formed to provide guidance on public participation and AFFH, and so that as P was mentioning earlier, that outreach has largely been done. We'll have at least one more community meeting coming up, which we've discussed, and I think what staff is recommending is that after that point, there's a report to council. The advisory committee at this point does not have any role that's been given by council in reviewing the draft housing element itself, and our recommendation is to bring that to council before it goes to HCD. And again, as I said, that recommendation is based on kind of the need to keep the process moving forward, but balancing that against the fact that we are we understand that that's something that the full council would want to see before the document goes to HCD. And I don't think Councilmember Moore or Vice Mayor Chow can disagree with me
not
if
the
I'm wrong
housing
about
plan.
that.
I don't mean the housing plan. I meant the fair housing assessment. And that's why I was questioning whether or not we were supposed to get that before we sent it to the council. That was more of my question. And or if we didn't have enough time, do we need a joint session? That's all.
So if I may, through the chair, Commissioner Parrish, the fair housing assessment is a requirement of the housing element itself. It's a piece of the housing element.
Right.
So when you review it, when the Housing Commission does get a chance to review the draft housing element, it will be a part of that report, and you will get a chance to, look at what's in there and make a potentially policy adjustments based on what you see in that particular piece of that draft housing element. So
Okay.
it's not that as though you're not going to see it. It's just you don't see it here for this. This committee has a different purpose, and so, but it'll come to you in a different form.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I do have a quick question for Chris. There are a couple of hands raised. This is the future agenda setting. What are the obligations there?
So there's no need to take public comment on future agenda setting. I mean, it's the purpose is to allow the committee to provide input. It's not legally required, and I don't think it's consistent with our practice to take public comment on future agenda items.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Vice Mayor?
Well, I had another comment, but I think public has suggested a future agenda item before in council meeting, but I think it's the chair's discretion. So I think the purpose of this committee is AFH. So I had expected, maybe wrongly expected, that we at least should review the fair housing assessment draft, because that gives us an idea how well we are doing as a committee in outreach. Because this kind of assessment usually has a summary of all the outreach that's been done, what groups have been reached, and what gaps is there. If without knowing that, we are just driving blind. And we have been driving blind. I had hoped we had something earlier to work on. I mean, to direct our outreach, but we have not had any. So I had hoped that maybe if it's possible by October 26th, we could have the draft fair housing assessment be part of the agenda for this meeting. Thank you.
So that again, that's outside of the scope of what the committee has been asked to do by council. We can, we can certainly discuss these requests with the city manager. She's been very closely involved in some of the sort of scheduling issues that we've touched on. But again, so we can certainly discuss that request with the city manager. But that would, based on our latest discussions, that would not be the process that we're recommending. And I believe at least two of us have a 3 o'clock call.
Yes.
Okay, and I do
Okay,
see.
yeah.
I don't know.
I did want to just suggest one thing. If there is something that shows up on the fair housing plan when the draft housing element is released, the city can always, council, whoever, can make a suggestion to have additional outreach to a particular group if we have missed any groups in our, outreach currently. So this is just a draft housing element that'll go out. We can have more outreach once the draft housing element has gone out. Again, we'll still have to consider time, budget, and all of that stuff, but at least it doesn't close the door on doing outreach if we have to, if we must. But you know, we did a pretty broad sweep of all the groups that, you know, we could collectively think of from an AFFH perspective, and tried to reach out to all of them. But, you know, to the extent that we've missed anything big, there are big holes in what we've done, then we can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you, Pew. So we have come to the end of the meeting. Vice Mayor, your hand is still up.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so I want to thank everyone, and I want to make sure that staff gets to your meeting. We will see everyone back on October 28th between 11 and 1, and have an excellent meeting on the 26th. And I hope that everyone joins and watches the next meeting for our outreach. And thank you, EMC, Andy, and Kylie. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.